Hey guys, how we doing? All right?
Hey, Brian. How are you?
I'm
Brandon,
doing
good
good.
to see you.
Hey guys.
We're
It's another week, right?
another week, and thanks for anyone that's joining. Today we're going to be talking about at least 4 next-gen cybersecurity solutions that we're going to say you must have in your business. So historically, years ago, spam filtering, antivirus, and a firewall was the 3 things that you had to have, and you were secure. At least that's back then you were that was the best way to get protected against the threats from years ago. Now it's changed so much over the years, and more recently the compromises, the malware, all these bad actors that are getting in. You need to realign and readjust your security stack to include a bunch of different. We're not going to we're going to be agnostic to vendors, but we're going to tell you what you need to be looking for. And so before we get into that, my name is Brian Bracci. I'm with B&L PC Solutions out of Strong Island, New York. And we have 2 of my buddies here today.
Hey, I'm Dave Groot with WinStar Technologies in Culpeper, Virginia.
And Brandon Bowers with Eisenreper Managed Technology Services out of South Florida.
Sunny South Florida, right? Or is it raining?
Sunny South Florida.
Is it
Yes.
is it sunny South Florida?
It's sunny today. Yeah.
All right, great.
All right, guys. Well, let's get right into it. I mean, so Dave,
So-
go ahead.
Can I start with just kind of lay down some of the framework,
Please.
the groundwork on this? So like you said, spam filter, firewall, antivirus. That used to be the standard issue, right? That was the things that we had to do. We protected the office space, the perimeter of the physical building in which we all sat and did things. Obviously, today everybody's out and about, and they're working from home. They're in coffee shops. They're remote. They're on a business meeting, what have you. We're doing all kinds of stuff. So that breaks that problem right there, right? We can't no longer protect that perimeter. But here's the bigger issue. We never used to really worry about the threat that could come from inside, right? And that's today really the focus that we're looking at on most levels. And all these tools are going to assist us on this because the hackers have learned with their tactics how to use the things that are built into the Windows and Linux and Mac operating systems that are tools designed for legitimate purposes to be used by administrators to do things, but they're using them in a malicious way. However, quite often, the security controls that are traditional and have been put in place, they trust that because it's being done under the premise of an internal user and their permission level. So they see somebody who has been breached, but they're a real user and they're doing something on the network and it's trusted in the traditional way of doing security. Today, we can't do that. We have to watch all of those things and be smart enough and quick enough to know they just came up with a new way to approach something. And the software and the tool sets that we're going to talk about are the things that are going to help us to identify.
Well, listen. I mean, even something as simple as opening up a PDF.
Yep.
You just launched ransomware on your system. Opening up a Word document. If you're a macro user in Excel, all these things, that you should be able to do that weren't necessarily monitored for this type of behavior. This needs to be revisited.
Completely. I mean, we do a hacking demo all the time for our public, speeches and such.
Yeah.
And we show them when they click and open up one of those document files, nothing really happens, right? It just goes away and it's gone. But then we show them on the back end, like in that 3 seconds, 15 different things took place. It's just insane how fast.
A lot of times people will open up that PDF and then maybe it doesn't even open. Let me click it again.
They think something went wrong, right?
Exactly.
And that's the whole idea,
Right.
Because once that hacker has that foothold, then he's got time, right? He doesn't need to do anything today. It can be next week because it's persistent, so it's going to stay.
Yeah, I was going to say when you right around what you mentioned in terms of foothold. Most attacks nowadays, it doesn't matter what vector they come in, their end goal is to get some type of foothold in the door and stay there for as long as possible and then see what they can do. And so whatever you can do to either prevent or detect or find that exposure and reducing that time to find that, the better. And that's really the tools that you want to look at, I feel like.
Yeah, identifying and minimizing that
Yeah.
window. Instead of Sony was what, 7 months before Sony knew they were breached, right? You want to take that and
that was a long time ago too, right?
It was a long time ago, and but just to show you that that's and even today, like you're saying, they get that foothold in there. If there's nothing that sees that, it could be days, weeks, months before anything happens.
The average is over 6 months. I want to
Yeah.
say the average is 8 or 9 months. The last time I looked at the stats. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because they're learning who you are, right? I mean, in some capacity, we know someone that was breached in their Office 365 tenant, and it turns out it was about 7 months, and hidden rules were created. All this activity went on behind the scenes, and watched how he spoke, watched how he wrote emails, all
Mhm.
this stuff, and then was successfully had $100,000 wired to a different account because he used the right words and the way that it amazing.
Sounded like the guy. It was like,
Yeah.
It's not a
seemed
smash and
real.
grab anymore,
No.
right?
And a
Yeah.
You know, they're not.
virus scan isn't going to find this. Sorry.
Oh no. That's okay. So number one for new next gen SIM, right? Like that's what would help us there, right? If we were ingesting those logs out of the Office 365 cloud, we would have seen those rules getting created, and we would have been able to pick up on that activity ahead of time and know that that was a problem.
And so let's also clarify. So there's non-technical people here. A SIM is going to
Yes.
pull the logs from all of your different systems into
Yep.
one place. You can call it a data warehouse, whatever you want to. And then rules are allocated against that to detect anomalies, right? So the most common one that I see that gets picked up in our SIM is, hey, there was a successful login from India, China, some other place that well, do I have a user there? Yes or no? Okay. Now you have some actual insightful information that you can look into what's going on. They usually call that an impossible travel event. Nobody's going to be able to log in from the US and then 5 minutes later from China or something like that. So just as an example.
Yeah.
So to kind of just take off on that point, I mean, right, SIM is the event logs from all kinds of different things. Everything you can get a log from, you should bring into this product because it's watching all of those things interact together. And that's where the anomalies are going to get picked up, right? So when a rule is made at 2 a.m. versus what's normally done at between the hours of 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, there's a question. And so now we have a guy, a woman, somebody in a SOC who's looking at that and saying, is this a real problem, or is it just and that takes you into the managed XDR, which is the next alphabet soup tool.
Yeah. So the replacement for antivirus, right? I mean, we don't use antivirus anymore. Traditional antivirus, we use an EDR. MDR, it's endpoint detect and respond, and that's there's a bunch of products out there that all work similar, but are they all AI based? Are they all
not all of
computer
them, but quite a
learning,
few of them are
AR,
behavioral based.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's no more virus definitions that they kind of compare to. It's a different beast, right? And Brandon, why don't you tell how that differs from traditional antivirus?
Are you asking me because of the analogy I mentioned? So whenever I'm explaining it to anybody, I always use the flu vaccine, which you could use the COVID vaccine now since it's kind of pertinent. But traditional antivirus, for the most part, there are differences and nuances to the different vendors, but they rely on definitions. And you can kind of equate those definitions or patterns, they may be called as well, to like a vaccine, right? So you get the flu vaccine, you get the COVID vaccine, you're good right now, right? As long as you get hit with that strain. But what happens? There's a mutation at some point with the flu. Flu vaccine is only as good as 70% typically, I think is the average. A couple of years ago, it was in the 50s because the strains that they created the vaccine from, it mutated that quickly. And we're seeing the same thing with COVID right now, right? New strains are coming out. The vaccine is
Not as
no
effective.
longer as effective.
Right.
So you can still get sick. So it's the same thing with the computer, right? Computer gets infected. And with those traditional antiviruses, they ship off the information. The vendor creates a definition, pushes those updates across all their computers. As long as your computer's online, right, you're getting the updates. And what needs to happen? Well, an attacker just needs to rebuild their application with a slight variation. Now they have what's called like a new hash. It's different. And the antivirus doesn't know what to do. I'm oversimplifying, but in general, like
Yeah.
that's what's happening. And so newer antivirus systems, they just, you don't need that. Like the computer could be off. We were doing some tests when we were looking at new solutions, and we actually leveraged the vendor's installer that was going back 6 months on a new infection, and the machine was invulnerable. It was a Windows XP machine. This was back when WannaCry was going on. That's what we were testing against, actually. Machine couldn't get infected. And if you take a machine at that time that didn't have the updated definitions from Symantec, McAfee, or whatever it is, you're out of luck right away.
They call that inoculating, by the way.
Right.
If you're
Right.
one of the old guys and you remember that back in the day. It's what shots do, right? They inoculate.
Yep.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Yeah,
What else,
our
David? So what else? So EDR, XDR.
Well,
you got a
I want to bring
FinSoc.
something up
Go ahead.
because I was
Please.
having a conversation with a buddy of mine, and he asked me if there was any one thing you would add to your security stack or recommend to a customer, like this is the one thing you need to have. And I started thinking about it. I mean, beyond the regular things like endpoint, which David mentioned, having a firewall and all those basic things. And the thing that I came up with is having some form of application whitelisting, blacklisting, or ring fencing. So you can kind of keep what that application is exposed to or speaking with to itself. And the perfect example is what you mentioned. So opening up a Word document or a PDF and it's doing other things in the background that it shouldn't be doing. Well, like, why should your Excel document open up a command prompt or PowerShell or start downloading files or doing other things like that? And that's what some tools that do ring fencing or application whitelisting and blacklisting will do for you.
And so the theory behind that is kind of more of a like a, I'm going to use the coin phrase of zero trust, right? But the
default deny, right?
It's identity management, right? Is what we're talking about here. We're trying to make sure that you're running under the lowest privilege possible to do your job until such time that something needs to be elevated, and then you're given that opportunity, right? So like you're saying, the application whitelisting, part of the problem isn't just that, though. It's not the people so much as we've gone a long ways in the industry. We're removing local administrator access, right? People used to be all administrators. They could install software. They could do everything they wanted to do. And we, industry got smart and said, that's not good. And we finally got people to understand, and we're starting to remove those permissions and such. But the problem gets down to the software vendors, right? Like they're writing software programs that are installing a service on a Windows machine that is then running with system privileges under a limited user account. So I, the hacker, can get in with a user who has no administrative privileges, but if I can call on that service that QuickBooks installed, and I can make that service with system administrative privileges do something else, now I've got something going on. And what you're talking about is identifying that and saying, why would QuickBooks need to do that? And that's not normal, right?
And the most times we see issues is with poorly written software.
Of course. But that's the part that people forget is they're assuming, and again, it's so many working pieces, and it's just the way things have been done for years and years and years and years.
Oh yeah, local admin, you need that to run this program. That's
well,
it.
And then we write the application to take as much permission as it can, so that there's no question about, I don't want to have to know how to code. I just want it to all run. And so here you go.
You know what the great thing is about some of these tools, though? So you have this application that the vendor, you're in a business that you have to rely on that application. It's poorly developed. It's really not supported on maybe newer hardware, or you need to run around things like giving administrative rights for that. A lot of these tools will allow custom application level elevation just for that application
per case.
Plus you can still ring fence it so it's not able to communicate or do things that it shouldn't be doing, only what it should be doing, and add security around that really large security loophole.
So I would agree with that, Brandon, that, the one tool that every person, I mean, we standardized on that.
Yeah,
Every
we did too.
endpoint we manage is running those kinds of technologies because it's so effective. And
Yeah.
it just makes the I'm not going to say makes the job easy, but it gives you a baseline that you can control. And it's
Yeah, I was
really
working
effective.
with a vendor this weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. On there was an update for a CRM system for a client, and we're going back and forth. Like I'm like, this should be working, and the vendor was like, yeah, why does this hash keeps changing? Like for some reason, like so they dug a little deeper, and probably about 6 hours later, I got a call back from the client. You know what? That's a bad update. Don't they say not to use that one? So so it was kind of caught and questioned. And
Very cool.
they were like, we're not just gonna exclude this based on this. Like has to be, and it ended up that okay. Because what do you want to do? I mean, ultimately, yeah, we need it to work now. That's what we need. And it's like, well, let's without these tools in place, you'll never see something like that. And it's just to see this behavior in real time is crazy.
No, it definitely is. It's a validation, right? Like, because look, I tell people all the time when I'm talking about this stuff, my goal is to never see that, right?
Yeah,
like I don't
right.
want to ever see those things happening. Now I know that's not real. We see them happening all the time, but in my office, I don't want them happening ever, right? Like, so that's
well, you see when you go through the audit logs with the software, you'll see all this shit that's denied. It's like, wow, like this would just be allowed.
It lets me sleep better at night. I tell you what.
Oh my gosh.
We took the same approach, David. Every customer just gets it at this point. And what you mentioned, Brian, you look at the audit logs in there, and you're like, why is this doing this? Okay, I'm glad that this is in place because.
I mean, we must have been living in blissful, ignorance for years. I guess is what it comes down to, right? Nobody was aware of the the extent to which we were exposing ourselves.
Nope.
All right, so how many is that?
That's 2.
Okay. Well, no, you talked about 3. We did SIM, we did EDR, and we did the
application
whitelisting. Application whitelisting.
Yeah.
So I mean, what other tools, Brian? What's big in your world?
Well, I mean, those are the key 3, and the 4th piece of the stack is what we use for to remediate footholds. And
that's what I was thinking about actually.
So maybe high-end vulnerability scanning.
Yeah, I mean, in footholds. I mean, listen, if you get so these products, unfortunately, they don't all do the same thing. So the application whitelisting, I think, is if you had to pick one, definitely that's a no-brainer.
That's where you start for sure.
But adding to it, if something somehow does get through, and
what if it was already through before you deployed?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what if if something gets through or has gotten through previously, your EDR MDR doesn't detect it for whatever reason, then you want to identify that foothold, right? So you need another piece of software to identify that and either remediate it for you or give you the remediation steps on. So it's the way I talk to prospects and clients is you have a high-end security system on your house. Every window, every door, you can see a mile each way down the house, but you leave your front door unlocked. Someone runs in your house, grabs something and leaves. You have no idea. What did they take? I have no idea. So you want to be able to find that from the vulnerability and remediate it. So that's, again, another piece that's kind of important. I wouldn't say.
And to find it and know, what do you have? You also have cameras, right?
Right.
And you have other layers.
Well, that's just it. So we know patching and updates and stuff is a big part of closing the gaps, right? When there's vulnerability announced,
MFA, all that stuff. Like this is beyond that, right?
I get that.
Yeah.
But the point is it's past the computers, right? Like hackers are not just hacking computers, right? That Vegas got hit by a fish tank, right? So this is IoT. This is your refrigerator that's connected to the internet. This is and guess what? It's plugged into the same network. And so none of the standard Windows patching or any of that kind of stuff is looking at any of those things. And that's where your vulnerability management stuff comes into play, because we're comparing to those vulnerability databases and making sure that we're seeing everything is up to date. If you're in a compliance mandate, that's incredibly huge. If
just
it's
a
just
requirement,
security, right? If
period.
it's security, it's just a
Compliance.
good best practice. You know?
Yeah.
But I would say the only other thing that I would use as a tool that I think is important that isn't often considered is more about the governance and in the compliance or in the controls, right? The paperwork per se. And I say that meaning the training, your end user training, your security awareness training, but your policies that are fitting your business needs and looked at and reviewed with regularity. They're taught to your employees. They're attesting to knowing those policies. They understand why that's a problem. You know, all those things, because the only way you're going to ever really kind of stay on top of all this is if everybody is marching to that same beat, right?
Well,
And you got it. It's a constant thing every
when
day.
you say that, I think of culture, you know,
Yeah.
and
It is
embedding
indeed culture.
security into your culture. And
Yeah.
like you said, your
So
training.
that's right. Governance. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that is the tool. That's what it is. It's the business culture or the maturity of their cybersecurity. Right.
And this
And-
needs to come from the top.
Well, that's
Yep.
exactly right. I was going to say you need buy-in. You need to, you know,
Yeah.
and that's why with us, at least we meet, or either we prospect to the decision maker. Like that's who we need to talk to. That person that's going to, you know, I had a great meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they had top brass in there because the IT team that I met with, the 8 people there, they wanted buy-in from above, and they said, "Come to this meeting," and they did. So once you see that, and that's what you have to kind of, and it maybe not be so easy, but you have to get the buy-in from up top, and then let it trickle down, because it's in all honesty, if you have these tools in place, we're not disrupting anybody's day. Everything
Right.
works as expected. You may not notice anything, right? And that's the goal, is to continue working, doing your job as normal. We're not talking about slowing down your computers. I mean, there's always going to be complaints about things, but
Right.
these are really effective and non-evasive programs that we're talking about, and solutions. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
Look, the alternative is a breach, and
yeah.
and just to kind of lay it out there, like, you know, you're looking, if a breach were to occur and any damage on any level takes place, any ransomware, any data exfiltration, any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a minimum of $150,000, $200,000 before you're finished with this, and that's the low end of what I'm talking
The
about.
problem is it's the unknown costs. Like
That's
there's
right.
some cost to getting your data back and the time lost there, but what's the cost to bad PR,
Your reputation,
your reputation,
your lost business
and
opportunities,
you don't know that for
No.
months. Yeah.
or never.
And it's
Right.
and it's very hard to calculate, right?
Right.
Because you just
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The-
You know,
the-
we
the-
still see people that have their USBs wide open. Like there's no one's walking around with USB sticks anymore. I mean, that's dwindled down because you have these online services that need to be protected as well. But these file sharing services, you know, name any one of them, it doesn't matter. But you know, we talk to people like, why do you have USB? Why isn't it just blocked? You know, default deny. Let's allow it if you need it. We'll check it. We'll mark it safe, and then we'll remove it. It's just, you know, so we do that too. I mean, the only time we hear from someone is when they're plugging in the USB, and it's like, "What's it for?" Well, I got my kids,
Right.
blah 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 blah. Well, then get approval on that, and then we'll do it, and then it usually goes away.
I would say when it comes to the executive buy-in, right? The key is not just the buy-in, but it's the resource allocation, right?
Mhm.
You gotta, as an executive, you gotta not only say this is a good thing, but I'm gonna give you resources to do it, right? I'm gonna give you a budget and a checkbook
true.
and like, don't just say, okay, yeah, we did it all, but don't you spend any, like, I mean, that's doing you no good. And in certain compliance frameworks, that's not even gonna fly.
Yeah.
If you don't have proven, documented resources of those programs and how much money and what's being, then you won't fail. You'll fail.
You'll
Sorry.
fail. Right.
Couldn't get the right word out.
We're running low on
Yes,
time,
we are.
so we should recap. Top
Okay.
4. What is it, Brian?
Well,
EDR,
application
MDR,
whitelisting,
right?
EDR.
SIM.
So you ask me a question, you're going to answer it. I see what you did there. Yeah, we got EDR, SIM, application whitelisting, and governance, right? I mean, that's
No, culture
You said
culture. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and vulnerability scanning.
Yep. I mean, there's again, it goes on, but those, you know,
There's probably 20 more.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we could talk about tools all day, but
Yeah.
look, it's about concept. That's what we're really trying to drive home.
Yeah.
It's not what tool you pick. The tool is only as good as the implementation of that tool.
And
Right.
ongoing monitoring of that
Right.
tool.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, you know, with some of these EDRs, you can pick a name, you can buy it, install it, and have it minimally configured, not to do. Maybe it's not doing isolation. Maybe it's not doing rollback. It's not doing. So
Look at Target.
You can say,
Hey,
"Oh, I have this and I'm covered." Well, maybe you're not. You got to make sure that
Target had a great tool in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I run attacks against these firewalls and these different devices and everything. And I can tell you, even these EDR programs, if they're not configured properly, I can come in there and get you in ransomware in no time.
Yep.
It's amazing. I love the fact that you can test that stuff and you can start to tweak it, because it really is required. It's not a set and forget. It isn't open the box, put it in, and you're done.
Nope.
So, okay.
All right, guys.
Good luck, everybody. Be safe.
Yeah. Thank you. We will talk to you guys next week.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a great week.